Hello, my yarny friends. I'm Sara Sach, and welcome back to my crochet channel. Today's video, I'm going to show you how to crochet the Unicorn Dreams baby blanket throw. Now, I'm calling it a throw because it is stitched with an open shell and lots of openings. It's made more for tossing on top of the baby, like maybe when it's in a stroller or just lying there asleep in its bassinet, and it just needs a little bit more of a blanket. It's just a nice take along. It measures about 22 inches wide and about 26 inches long. But of course, you can use those multiples and make it wider, and then do more rows to make it longer if you want to adjust the pattern. What I had in mind here was a friend who had lost her first baby, had a couple of miscarriages, and then was able to have a beautiful baby girl. When a mom and dad have a baby that doesn't survive, and then they have a beautiful, healthy baby later, that baby is called a rainbow baby. And so I kind of had that in mind for her when I made this blanket. The yarn that I used was Sweet Roll Vivid, and we'll talk more about that in just a minute. I did post a picture of that type of yarn at the beginning of the video for you to see. But it's a really simple 2-row repeat pattern, and it just works up super fast. If you're jumping on an airplane to go see your new grandbaby or a new nephew or niece, take this with you and work on it on the plane. It's super easy. Or you're jumping in the car, toss it in your bag, work on it in the car. It's a super easy pattern, and it's a 2-row repeat, so you just keep going and going till it's the length that you need. And then, of course, we put a double crochet trim on the top. We do not put a trim around the edges. The way we stitch this up, it's not necessary, but if you want to, go right ahead and do that. Now, you can find the complete pattern with lots of pictures on my blog, and as always, I'll put that blog link down in the notes underneath this video. So the yarn that we used is called Premier Sweet Roll Vivid, and the name of this colorway is called Moonbeam. I thought it was perfect. It's not quite a pastel, but it's also not quite super bright either. It's just a little bit muted, and I think it's perfect for a baby blanket. Now, you're going to need about 7 ounces, which would be 2 of these sweet rolls. But if you make it bigger, of course, you're going to need more. You might even want to use a solid yarn in order to make the trim. Now, for today's demo, I'm not going to be using the striping yarn because sometimes that's a little difficult to see. I'm just going to use a solid just so that you can see how the stitches are worked. So don't worry about that. Now, we're going to be stitching it up with an H hook, which is a 5.0 millimeter crochet hook. And then after that, all you need is a needle to weave in your ends and a pair of scissors. Just a reminder, this baby blanket throw is stitched up with a medium weight number 4 acrylic yarn. And I used the Sweet Roll Vivid, but you can use any medium weight number 4 yarn that you would like for this project. You don't have to use the Vivid Sweet Roll. I just loved it for this project. I'm going to be using this solid teal color, and that way the striping changes and things don't get in the way of you seeing the stitches. All right, let's get started. We're going to begin by stitching a row of foundation double crochets. So I've made my slip knot, and I'm going to chain 4 chains. So we'll yarn over, we'll go in that 4th chain and pull up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and just go through that first loop. Now we'll yarn over and go through the next 2, yarn over and go through the next 2. So we made our chain and double crochet. Yarn over and go through that chain stitch that we made. And then we'll finish our double crochet. I love using the foundation double crochet stitches when I'm making a blanket. It makes a stretchy edge, but it also makes a firm edge. I also think that it makes counting your stitches a lot easier. If you struggle with counting your stitches, you can always use stitch markers to mark them every 10 or 20 stitches to make counting those stitches a lot easier. Now we're going to stitch 59 foundation double crochets. 59 foundation double crochets. I have stitched my 59 foundation double crochets. All right, so now we are going to chain 3, and this chain 3 counts on this row and on every row as our first double crochet. We're going to double crochet in the next 2 stitches. And chain 2. We're going to skip the next 2 and stitch a single crochet in the next stitch. Now we're going to chain 2, skip 2, and in this next stitch we're going to stitch an open double crochet, which is a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet, all stitched in the same stitch. Now we'll chain 2, we'll skip the next 2 and single crochet in the next, and chain 2. We'll skip the next 2 and stitch that open shell stitch in the next, which again is double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet, all stitched in that same stitch. Chain 2, skip 2 and single crochet in the next, and chain 2. And so we'll continue to repeat this across until we reach those last 5 stitches. Open shell stitch, chain 2, skip 2, single crochet, chain 2, skip 2, and repeat all the way across, again until we reach those last 5 stitches. I have repeated my open shell stitch, chain 2, skip 2, single crochet, chain 2, skip 2, all the way across, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shell stitches, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 single crochets. All right, I'm going to bring my camera back in and then show you how to finish the row. We finished our last single crochet. We're going to chain 2, skip the next 2, and then double crochet in those last 3 double crochet stitches. And chain 3. And so you have 3 double crochets here, then we have all those shell stitches and single crochets, and then at the end we skip 2 and 1 double crochet in those last 3 and chain 3. All right, let's turn our work. We're going to double crochet in the next 2 because again that chain 3 counts as our first. And on this row, we're only going to chain 1 at this point. And in this first single crochet, we're going to stitch our open double crochet shell stitch. So we have a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet stitched in that single crochet. We're going to chain 2 now. We only chain 1 right here because if we would have chained 2, that would have been too much space. All right, so we're going to go over to the middle double crochet of the first open shell stitch and stitch a single crochet. and chain 2. Now we're going to go to the next single crochet and stitch an open shell, which is again double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. And we're stitching that all in that single crochet and chain 2. Okay, so we've chained 2, so we're going to go to that middle double crochet of our next shell stitch and stitch a single crochet and chain 2, and then we'll repeat that. Our open shell stitch in our next single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet in that middle double crochet of our next shell stitch and chain 2. All right, so let's take a look at it so you can see. I'm going to sort of spread it. It makes it a little easier to see. So we're stitching our open shell stitches in the single crochets, and we're stitching our single crochets in the middle double crochet of our shell stitches. We chained 1 here, but on all these other ones we chained 2. And we're going to repeat this all the way across until we reach those last few stitches. All right, so I've completed this row except for those last few stitches. And you're going to have 9 shell stitches because we stitched them in the previous rows 8 single crochets. And then you're going to have 8 single crochets because they're stitched in the previous rows shell stitches. All right, so we started with those 3, we chained 1, then we did our alternating single crochet and shell stitches, and now we're going to finish this side. So again, let me bring that camera in just a little bit closer. So here's our last shell stitch, and on this end we're only going to chain 1. All right, and then we'll stitch those last 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3, and chain 3. And isn't it already looking really beautiful? Now we're ready for row 4. We've stitched our chain 3, we're going to turn our work, and again we're going to stitch a double crochet in those first 2 stitches, 1 and 2. Now on row 4 we're going to chain 2. So just to be clear, on the rows where we start with the shell stitch, we only chain 1 at the beginning and the end with those 3 double crochets. But since we're going to start with a single crochet, we chained 2. And then chain 2. We're going to place our shell stitch in the next single crochet, which again is an open shell stitch. Double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and chain 2. And then we'll stitch our single crochet in that second double crochet of the previous row's shell stitch. Chain 2, and then our open shell stitch in the next single crochet. And I think you're starting to see how this pattern works. Once you get these first few rows down, it is super easy. Okay, here's my open shell stitch. Chain 2, we'll take a look at it. Alright, so we started with our 3 double crochets and we chained 2. We placed a single crochet in the center double crochet of the previous shell stitch. Chain 2, open shell stitch in the next single crochet, and the next second double crochet of our shell stitch. And again, we're just going to repeat this across until we reach those last few stitches. We have repeated this all the way across until those last few stitches. Here's my last single crochet in the center double crochet of my shell stitch. I chain 2, and then we're going to stitch 1 double crochet in those last 3. And chain 3. All right, so again, we have 9 single crochets and 8 of our open shell stitches. We've got a chain 2 here, 3 double crochets, and then our 3 double crochets, chain 2 at the beginning of our row. We chain 3, we're going to turn our work, and now we're basically just going to repeat what we did on row 3. So we're going to double crochet in the next 2 stitches. We're going to chain 1 and then stitch our open shell stitch in that first single crochet. And then chain 2. So just a reminder, on the rows where we start, which will be every other row with an open shell stitch stitched in a single crochet, we only chain 1 after those first 3 double crochets. All right, and then we're just going to stitch a single crochet in that second double crochet of our open shell stitch, chain 2, and then stitch our open shell stitch in the next single crochet. And chain 2. All the other stitches between our single crochets and our shell stitches are chain 2, except for that very first one. All right, and then we'll just repeat this across. I have again repeated across my open shell stitches and my single crochets with my chain 2s in between. And then on the end here, because we're ending with our shell stitch, we're just going to chain 1 and then 1 double crochet in those last 3. So just a reminder, let me go ahead and do my chain 3 here. Just a quick reminder, we're alternating every other row. It's a 2-row repeat. And on the rows where we begin with our shell stitch in a single crochet stitch, we only chain 1 after those 3 double crochets. But we continue to chain 2 all the way across between our shell stitches and single crochets until the end. And then on that last shell stitch, we chain 1 and do our last 3 double crochets. Okay? If you chain 2 there, it gives it too much space and makes it want to curl a little bit. And so it just lays better if we just do 1 on the rows where we do the shell stitches. All right, let's do row 6. Double crochet in the next 2 because remember our chain 3 counts as a double crochet on every row. We're going to chain 2, we're going to single crochet in the second double crochet of our open shell stitch and chain 2. Then we're going to stitch that open shell stitch in the next single crochet. Oop, almost missed my stitch. There we go. Chain 2, single crochet in that center or second double crochet of our shell stitch, chain 2, and then our open shell stitch in the next single crochet. And I think by now you pretty much understand how the 2-row repeat works. I really just love how it lays. I love how it looks. It's a little bit lacy and classy, and it gives just a little bit of warmth and not a whole lot of heavy heat. So, repeat this across for row 6. until you get to those last few stitches. I have repeated across row 6 with my shell stitches and single crochets. Here's my last chain 2 and then 1 double crochet in those last 3. And chain 3. Isn't that just gorgeous? We have now completed 6 rows. All right. And so what you're going to do is you're going to continue to repeat row 5 and row 6, which are the last 2 rows that we did. Row 5 and row 6. And you're going to continue to repeat those for 44 more rows or more if you want it longer, alternating every other row. All right, and you're going to find that it makes an absolutely gorgeous blanket. Whether you added length or whether you add width, I did that backwards, whether you add length or whether you add width, it's going to be an absolutely gorgeous blanket. All right, so we're going to repeat row 5 and row 6 for 44 more rows, alternating every other row. So here is my actual blanket, and I have completed the amount of rows that I want to make for my blanket. All right, so when you get as many rows as you need for your blanket, the last thing that you need to do is just add the bottom edge. Our chain 3 counts is our first double crochet, and now we're going to double crochet in the next 2 double crochets, just like we've been doing. And then we'll place 1 double crochet in that chain 1 space, 1 double crochet in the single crochet, and then 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space. Then we'll place 1 double crochet in those 3 double crochets, but not in the chain 1 spaces in between those 3. Now we'll place 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space, 1 and 2, and then 1 double crochet in the single crochet, 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space. Now, my last row I ended with having my single crochet at the end. If you ended with your open double crochet, it's totally okay. The only difference is you're going to chain 1 in that first, or double crochet 1 time in that first space like we did up here, but you'll still do 1 double crochet in your next 3, and then you'll just do what we did here. You'll put 2 double crochets, 1 double crochet in the single, and 2 double crochets. All right, so it still works the same. You just ended differently, and it's totally okay because, like I said, you'll still put a double crochet in the 3 double crochets of the open shell stitch, 2 double crochets in the chain 2 space, 1 and 2, 1 double crochet in the single crochet. All right, so don't worry if you ended on a shell stitch and not the single crochet edge there as your last stitch. It works the same either way. We just want a nice even row of double crochet on the end of our blanket. All right, and then we'll just continue to work that across, and then when we get to the end, we'll tie off and weave in our ends. I have repeated that all the way across until the end. I'm going to place 1 double crochet in that chain 2 space, and then 1 double crochet in those last 3 double crochet stitches. All right, so we'll cut our yarn. We'll tie that off and grab our needle and weave this in. Okay, now I do not add any kind of a trim or edging to it. You certainly can. You could do a row of open shell stitches on the outside if you wanted to, or maybe change to a white or a solid of any of the colors that are in this blanket. That would be pretty. I just didn't see that it was necessary, but it's up to you. Remember, you do what works best for you. So now my Unicorn Dreams blanket is all complete, and I think it's absolutely gorgeous. I love these big blocks of teal in here. I think it's super pretty, and all the punches of orange and yellow and pink. Isn't it gorgeous? Well, that's our Unicorn Dreams baby blanket throw. It also makes a nice lap blanket too.